Yes, I worked on the Hill before I was here. I worked on the Hill for about 4 years. Sort of your typical work your way up the food chain. So I started at the entry-level position and moved my way up. So I was doing legislative work for a couple years by the time I left. Was always interested in lobbying for causes I believed in. So then I came here, and I've been here for about 3 years since. I think a lot of jobs, you have to do the job in order to learn the job. I would say that's definitely true. Sort of being on the Hill and being a lobbyist, that the Hill experience really helps because I learned the process in so much depth. Anything from the actual legislative process to more the political process, and then obviously the staff contacts and Hill contacts are extremely important too. But it does vary. Some people also will work in an organization and kind of work their way up within the organization and become a lobbyist. We have someone on staff that's what they've done. Some people will work at sort of more maybe policy or a think tank organization, so they maybe know an issue in great depth, but then will move to sort of more the lobbying side of it. So there definitely are different paths. I would say another path is members of Congress, that after they retire, it's not uncommon for them to become lobbyists too. AAUW, it stands for the American Association of University Women. So we're a membership association. We have about 100,000 members nationwide. Our name's a little confusing, but basically anyone can be a member as long as they have at least a college degree. And mainly our members are people who care about issues of equity in education. Another big issue we work on is pay equity, work-life balance legislation, which is things like paid sick leave days, paid parental leave, those sorts of things. So the main way I describe what I do is educating both Capitol Hill staff, members of Congress, and also the executive branch. So I work mainly with the Department of Education and a little with the Department of Labor. We do everything from the very start of the legislative process, which is finding a member of Congress who will introduce the piece of legislation. So I would say that's the first thing. After a piece of legislation is introduced, you try to usually get co-sponsors. So co-sponsors are public, you can look them up online. They're basically members that publicly pledge their support and say, I support this piece of legislation. From that point, you're usually trying to gain both co-sponsorship for the bill, but also votes for if it comes to the floor. So most bills are authorization bills. That can be anything from a bill that actually does something, so it changes the law, to a bill could authorize an amount of money, which does not actually fund it. Bills don't get funding until money is appropriated. So the Appropriations Committee, both the House and the Senate, work on those bills. The process is you'd always want to get an authorization bill passed, and then you start working on trying to get funding. One example of that is a provision we got, I guess about 2 years ago now, in the Higher Education Act reauthorization. It's a new program. It's a program that us and a couple other groups were working to get for several years. So it passed, it became law. But unfortunately, in this economic climate, we haven't been able to get funding for it, which isn't a surprise. There were a lot of new programs in that Higher Education Act. So, that's something that I'll work on sort of every year when appropriations time comes to actually get funding for that bill. The process can vary, but often if it's a new staffer that I don't know, I'll send them an email or call and say, hi, I'm Tracy with AAUW. I wanted to set up a meeting on this. We have this many members in your district. And they'll say, okay, great, come on in. So what's standard is that lobbyists always visit the Hill. That's partly because I guess the thinking is, there's several reasons, but one is that Hill staff have less time than lobbyists. So that means I have to get to the Hill. So there's some transportation time involved too. A standard meeting will vary, but as little, I would say, as 15 minutes to maybe as much as an hour if it's their boss's #1 priority and you're the #1 expert. So some other ways that we sort of get a bill passed is there's my job, which is lobbying, but then there's everything that AUW members do. They tend to be very engaged and active, so they do everything from meeting with their member of Congress when they're back in their district, to sending letters to the Hill, writing letters. Our members are their voters. So at the end of the day, if they do something to make their voters unhappy, they may no longer be a member of Congress. So I think that's always in the back of members' minds, sometimes more so than others, especially around election time. It's definitely on the forefront of their mind, which is often why controversial issues don't come to the floor right before election. There can be a lot of decisions why, but leadership sometimes doesn't want to force members to take a hard vote if they think that it's going to negatively impact their reelection, especially if it's something that can maybe wait a month until, you know, the election's over, that sort of thing. I know the word lobbyist has gotten a bad rap, sort of become an evil word. I would say obviously there's lobbyists that do unethical things, just like there's people in every industry that do unethical things. I think that's kind of tarnished the name for the rest of us. I work on causes I believe in. You know, I wouldn't work on them if I didn't believe in them. So I don't think lobbyist is a bad word. Mainly what I do is educate staff. If you sort of think that, you know, when I was a House staffer, I worked on 10 issues ranging from education, immigration, veterans, I mean, all over the place. There is really no way for me to know everything about all of those issues. So I really say that lobbyists are there to educate Hill staff, bring issues to their attention, problems that are out there, possible legislative fixes, and then basically convince them to support the piece of legislation. On the flip side, I would say if a piece of legislation is maybe moving that you don't support and you don't want to pass, you know, your goal is to convince them not to support that legislation. So that's mainly what I do. It upsets me a little that the word lobbyist has become sort of so tarnished, because I don't think that's an accurate representation of what most lobbyists do or what the field actually is.